I don't care who you are or how much you're making, your spending capacity is not unlimited.
You sure you're not spending too much money?
For almost all of us, it's actually very important to be conscious of this. Your ability to save and therefore invest really is simply what is left over after you look at how much you earn and then you subtract how much you need to or want to spend.
Once you've done that, it's pretty straightforward from there.
It's simple math really, but there's a lot of emotional issue and discipline required here to do it well. So if you want to save and therefore invest more, well, you have two choices, don't you? You can earn more money or you can spend less, or I suppose a combination of the two.
There were only two options.
Checkmate. You win this one, my friend.
And that is really it. Now obviously everyone wants to earn more. I get it. But earning more is generally much more difficult than spending less. I'm actually a massive advocate for simply earning more, if you can do it. That is what I do. But the honest truth is, it isn't easy, and until you work out a way to do it, well, it might be in your best interest to see what you can do to control your spending.
I can't. I simply can't.
After all, it's no good growing your income to be double what it is now if you're going to spend it all anyway.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
So then how do we cut back on our spending? Well, there are a lot of different ways, but here's just a couple of things you should be considering to begin with. First things first, you actually need to audit your expenses. The first step to cutting back on expenses is to audit what you're actually spending. Take a deep dive into your bank statements and identify where your money is going every month. Categorize your expenses into necessities and discretionary spending. This is where a budget obviously comes in handy, and I'm a strong advocate for you keeping one. Now, I'm not saying you can't have discretionary spending. You can have as much of it as you bloody well want. But it's important that you appreciate what you're spending, what you cut back on, and whether you'd rather cut back on it to invest more, or if the balance is right, then you forego the opportunity to save and invest to spend more now. That's a balance that you need to strike for yourself. I'm not out here advocating you cut back to the bare minimum.
You should spend it how you want.
But the simple exercise that you're going to engage in sets the stage for targeted cost cutting.
We have to cut costs.
You can't know what you're spending without doing this step. And without knowing what you're spending, you can't know where you can cut back. A month's worth of expenses will include a lot of small purchases. We're all human. We have a limited bandwidth and a limited memory. So reduce it to writing so that you can better keep a record of what you're doing and assess whether or not you're happy with it. You might be happy with it. I'm not saying you can't be, and that's totally fine, but you need to review it. After all, what you can measure, you can improve. So the first and most important step is to begin measuring. Following this, you will have the opportunity to actually identify what expenses you can do without. And look, there's no way around it, this is never fun. Simply from a behavioral psychology point of view, we know human beings, through what is known as loss aversion, will actually struggle with this step.
Psychological option detected.
Humans amazingly feel greater pain at the idea of losing $100 than they feel in terms of enthusiasm for gaining $100. We fear a loss more than we enjoy a win. When it comes to cutting expenses, well, that really works against us. A simple thing, like cutting back on subscription costs, will feel painful, even if you're cancelling subscriptions for streaming services that you haven't used in the past month. It will feel like a loss, even though it is practically speaking very much a gain. One simple thing to remember, which I think will make it easier for you, if you were to cancel a subscription, let's say to Netflix as an example, because you really don't use it and you think you can save the money, well, if you're concerned that you don't want to forego the opportunity to watch something on Netflix, don't worry. The decision is not irreversible. You can sign back up pretty quickly next week if you want to. If you all of a sudden decide you want to binge watch something that's only on Netflix, you're actually simply ceasing to pay for the service until you need the service. And if you don't need the service, you'll save that $15 a month until you do. Now I know that saving $15 a month might not sound significant, but if you find enough of these opportunities to save money, and I assure you, they do actually become significant as a whole.
Of course, it all adds up.
Another action item that comes from the auditing of your expenses in step 1 is the idea of being able to deal with the expenses you need, but to deal with them more effectively than you might be doing now. What I mean is that simple things like your telephone bill, or maybe your insurance or your internet, are examples of services that you genuinely need. I'm not going to sit here and tell you to cancel those.
Huh? I mean, how crazy would that be?
As crazy as soccer?
But You can review them to see whether or not a more cost-effective option that meets your needs is available. It's also possible sometimes to simply revisit the plan you have with the same provider to see if there's anything they can do internally to provide a lower cost option for you. You'd be amazed how they can be willing to do this if they think they're going to lose your business.
Wow, that's bad for business.
I mean, you stand to lose nothing from asking. Now, if you notice in your auditing of your expenses and looking through a budget, or just looking through where your money goes, that you spend a lot of money eating out, well, I've got some great news. You can save a lot of that by simply eating in.
I can't believe no one's thought of it.
I know!
Now, is that exciting? Well, no. At least not for most of us, myself included. And people who enjoy cooking at home are generally already doing it because, well, they enjoy it. So it's not a large part of their monthly expenses as it might be for someone like myself or you maybe. I'm not saying that you shouldn't go out. I love eating out. I get it 100%, but the question is, would it be better for you to cut back from eating out each week to maybe once every other week if you need that extra money to meet your financial goals?
You might want to work on that.
Generally, I find the cost of a good meal out can feed me for a couple of days.
I think our money would be spent better elsewhere.
Obviously, this is not going to be the same for everyone. You need to look at your own expenses. If you were to be, for example, eating out at cheaper establishments, then maybe this is less true. Look at your budget, look at your expenses, and make a decision for yourself that strikes the appropriate balance between a good life and a wise set of financial moves.
Well, whatever works for you.
One final point that is worth considering is the concept or exercise of engaging in a circuit breaker of your activities or a reset to simply cut back on all the extra things in life for 1 week. It's a really interesting exercise, one that involves self-discipline and one that I would recommend.
Well, that sounds hard.
What I'm talking about is that for 1 week you make the conscious decision not to go get coffee, not to eat out, not to spontaneously purchase anything, not to grab a massage on the weekend.
Wait, that doesn't sound fun.
It is easier to say no to these temptations when you know it's just for a week, and then you know you can go back to incurring all those expenses from there on out. It will be easier knowing that. And I think for most people, you genuinely notice at the end of it that you actually don't need all or some of those things that you buy frequently. And if you're willing to take this exercise just a little bit further, track each of the expenses in the week, each of the costs that you didn't incur because you chose to forego them during that week, and tally that full amount at the end of the exercise. You will likely have saved hundreds of dollars. For some people who live a very good life, they may even save thousands. Look, this is a short video. They were just a few ideas. By no means is that all that you can be doing to cut back on your spending. There is a very long list of things that can be spoken about in much greater detail. There are a lot of things you can be doing. But if you haven't tried all of these simple steps, each is definitely worth the effort. Good luck, guys.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.